Welcome to the Good AP Times podcast, the accounts payable podcast presented by Factura AI, the only accounts payable software for your multi-location business. Excited for this next episode? Enjoy. I'm your host, Megan Hardy, and I'm thrilled to have Brad Schuchardt here with us.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Appreciate you having me. So I am a career CPA, have spent my entire career in the restaurant industry in some capacity, both in public and private settings. And I'm the founder and owner of BTBK Accounting Services. We are a hyper-focused bookkeeping firm that specializes in that restaurant industry niche.
So, Brad, I'm so happy to have you on today because I really want to talk about what BTBK does best. And I laugh, I say, you guys kind of come in when those restaurant teams start to really scale and really start to have that kind of finance start to break down, or whether it's invoices, whether it's AP, but that finance part that really gets complicated when it starts to scale. So, what do you think is the first thing that you really see as businesses start to scale kind of fall apart a little bit?
I would say that, when businesses are small and they don't have an expert, right, in their court, they tend to do things the wrong way, right, because they are not accountants. So
Yeah.
what we find is doing things the proper way. If you think of like true GAAP and accrual accounting, especially as you scale and you come to have maybe debt covenants with your bank and a loan, or a review or an audit, doing things the proper way, which provides some financial clarity as well, seems to be something we notice.
I love it. Fair enough. Where do you think restaurant finance teams are losing the most time today? Like, where do you think they dedicate the most time that is just a little bit of a waste?
Yeah, I mean, accounts payable is an obvious one, right? They, especially when you're doing it manually, if you think of skilled humans that are spending their time doing mindless data entry all day, that's obviously not in a very efficient way to do things, especially from an accounts payable perspective. So there's a huge time suck there of people wasting their time keying in data that should be automatically captured.
What is the point as restaurant businesses begin to scale that they should really start looking into either tools or people or bringing in someone like yourself? Where do you kind of see that, I guess you can say, pinnacle point?
Mm-hmm. So our bread and butter is in that franchise space with brands.
Yeah.
But I'd say really specifically with like your casual dining, those folks who are the GM, the owner, the chef, they're all the things all at once, right?
Yeah.
Trying to be their own admin person too. And for sure, for those folks, when you go from having one unit to even two units, it's very obvious, right, that you shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing these things. And that goes for any business, right, of wearing too many hats, right? I'm my business owner. I shouldn't be the HR person too, right?
Yeah.
And as you scale, taking a step out of those roles and using an expert to do that. So for casual dining, I'd say right away, right? You should be doing that anyway because you don't have the time. For groups that are scaling, right? If you think of a branded franchisee that's going from 1 to 5 units or to 10
Yeah.
units, et cetera, having a system in place to support you in terms of like an external firm or a consultant or something of that nature becomes very obvious, I think, after one unit, right? If you get into the 2 to 10 range, you can maybe get by, you can squeak by with your bookkeeper and QuickBooks or something like that. But after that, you just can't anymore.
You guys specialize in restaurants, and I think that there's a lot of people that don't understand the difference between restaurants and like traditional other multi-location businesses. What makes restaurant finances so much more complicated?
It's the volume. I would say that restaurant accounting is actually super simple from like a technical standpoint. It's the volume of the transactions that really bogs people down. And if you don't have the right systems in place, it can really get you. So like if you think of, right, how many point of sale tickets, right, are coming through on a daily basis, you think of all the accounts payable that they manage. It's just volume, and people have a hard time keeping up with that volume if you're relying on a manual process.
Makes a lot of sense. What have you seen be, you kind of talked about AP, talked about point of sales. What point do you see that complexity really start to break? Like where in that process do you see it traditionally break when you guys come in?
Usually, I mean, I guess in those multi-unit groups, right?
Yeah.
Accounts payable is a huge one. I think, from a right, we've talked about that a little bit in the manual data entry, right?
Yeah.
Uh, the other main piece would be with your sales. So if you are truly looking to get real-time information on your business, having an old school like QuickBooks where you run a point of sale report on a weekly basis or a monthly basis and key in a journal entry like that doesn't work. So having a connected system with like daily real-time information that automates all that volume, I think
Yeah.
is
Hot take from there. How often are you guys coming in and seeing people that are month, week delayed in some of that real-time data?
Probably 100% of the time. I think every single client I've ever taken on is behind in some capacity, and it's ranged from we're a month behind to we're a year behind, right? And
Oof.
I don't think anybody's ever been current, literally,
Yeah.
that I've ever taken on.
One of the things that I saw on your LinkedIn, which I loved, was a certification for data storytelling. I would love to know what, with the information about kind of like behind data and with that, what data storytelling do you like when you get a new client? Like, what is your favorite storytelling to go in and see how it's impacting their business?
Yeah, that class, that's funny.
It was
Accountants
the
aren't
coolest in my
very,
opinion. I was like, that's a great certificate.
accountants don't have a good creative side, right? So like we're really black and white and
Yeah,
very good at our spreadsheets, right? But like to make that a visual representation that an owner or an executive can digest and read in a quick format is super important. So like that client deliverable, converting it from basic accounting speak into something that's usable for them is what that was intended to do. And so we continue to get better at that. We've gotten a lot better at that, and I continue to get better at that. But getting that kind of executive summary deliverable to somebody in a visual format is really important there. My favorite part is just summarizing it so that they don't have to comb through a very detailed P&L to form
yeah,
their own opinions, right? I should lead them to water, if you will.
yeah. I think I've worked in restaurant industry too for a little while, and I think it's something that we don't discuss enough is how impactful some of that data is back to the operator. So if you were a restaurant owner right now, what would you say is the most important thing that you'd say to a restaurant operator of like why you need to make sure that your finances and your accounting to help your operation team? Like what is the main value there?
So for an operator to make decisions on their business, right? We talked about that real-time information.
Yeah,
What good is your labor, if you find it out 2 weeks later, right? Not
yeah.
only were you not to do anything about that week in question, but now another week's gone by and you still haven't made any changes to either your scheduling, your forecasting, whatever that may be. So I think the real-time information is super critical, and having it be accurate, right? So having it entered the right way, whether that's GL coding or in the right period and matching expenses and revenues, all of that plays a huge part of having, an expert do your books so that you have good information to act on. And then in real time, right, you can do something about it.
So let's say somebody is a internal CFO or internal accountant for a team. Where would you tell them first and foremost? They've taken on a brand new client. Where would you tell them first and foremost to go to help kind of improve their processes? What would be the first steps, or what are your guys' first steps when you take on a new client?
Yeah, I think you go with that base, that foundation of your accounting, accounts payable, right? I'll repeat that, again in this call here. I'm sure that's an easy win, right? If you think of automating that process, making it be more accurate, more efficient, less human hands touching that and making mistakes, I think is a huge place to start. And then on that volume, right? Figuring out a way to automate your sales reporting so that you're not manually doing that after the fact.
Nice. So how do you balance consistency across the locations without slowing things down?
Yeah, I mean, we use a couple of tools, right, to accomplish these things that the humans can assist, right, and manage.
Yeah.
So, Factura's, a great resource for us. We use that for all of our accounts payable across our 400 plus locations that we manage. It's been an absolute godsend for us in terms of getting accurate accounts payable and making sure our clients' bills are paid, on time.
Yeah.
Um, Deliver Sense is another group that we use. I'll name drop there where we can automate that sales process and those adjustments related to it.
Nice.
Um, I think at one point on a Five Guys group, I did the math, and there were like 17 different payment types on a daily basis. When you start talking all the different credit cards, brick and mortar, online, the third party deliveries, so like it's a ton to reconcile. So
Yeah.
try to automate that through there as much as we can. And then finally, Restaurant 365 is a great tool that we use in terms of that multi-location reporting, right? And having
Yeah.
a system built for that, whereas like QuickBooks wouldn't be.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about like sales and invoices and all of that. What do you think the messiest part of the invoice life cycle is? Like where do you think in traditional restaurants is the biggest spot where it gets really messy?
Uh, I mean, the first for me is probably the accuracy of your expense line item, right? Like, am I putting that in the right place on the P&L, or does it belong on the balance sheet? That's a huge piece of it to get it in the right spot.
Yeah.
Um, and after that, I would say it would be the date matching, right? Is this in the right period, of when that service took place? So that's another thing that people overlook.
Right. Fantastic. What is one thing that you say to yourself, like, this is something that is the game changer in the industry now, or even 5 years from now, you see this change happening in the industry right now?
I mean, I'll go with the obvious choice in AI.
Okay.
It it is changing so fast, and there's a lot of people that in the world right now that think that the original Chat GPT is what AI is, right? The whole
Yeah.
chatbot thing, and I'm going to have it plan my vacation and all that, and that's really cool. But um, there's so much more to it if you think of like the coding side, right? And I don't know how to code, but like Claude Cowork is insane in helping automate processes that you do.
Yeah.
And I know ChatGPT has Codex, so whatever your flavor, right? And Google Gemini, it doesn't matter. Having these AI assisted processes be automated, I think, is really going to change the game for everybody, not just in accounting, but in every industry on earth.
Absolutely. All right. Now for the fun part, we'll do some rapid fire fun questions. All
Sure.
right. Favorite restaurant you'll always go back to?
There's one in Madison. I'm in Wisconsin here, called the Harvey House, and it is a elevated supper club.
Fun.
They have the best French onion soup you've ever had in your life, where like it comes out in the broth and they pour the cream on it and it make it right in front of you. I mean, it's incredible.
I love that. What is the most underrated role in a restaurant?
Ooh, that's a good one. Gosh, I think the first person you see, right? So whoever you come up to in a casual space, that might be the hostess, right?
Yep.
And then in a fast casual or quick service, that might be the cashier. But that's the first impression you get of the restaurant when you walk in.
That brings up a topic that we've been talking a lot about. We talked a little about on the last podcast, which is how important do you think customer service is to these restaurant owners and operators and leaders when obviously customer service is one of their key pillars kind of in their business, right? We know that. What do you think? What do you like? How important do you think customer service is to these folks?
I mean, it's vital, right? So you could have, I think, to be successful as a restaurateur, you need probably one or two of three things: is good food, right? Is number
Yep.
one. A good location, right? People got to find you, and then good customer service. And so you can get by with a couple of them and not all three, right? And to be really exceptional, you would have all three, but customer service is huge, right? If even if my food's bad, if I enjoyed my experience and they were kind and pleasant, like I would still come back because they care about what they do and have a passion for it.
As being like a restaurant partner, is customer service really important for you guys to your customers because they value it so much?
Absolutely, right? So like if you think of what we're doing, and I mentioned earlier that restaurant bookkeeping isn't complicated stuff, right?
Yeah,
Um, so what are we then if we're not? I mean, we are experts, but what is our differentiator of
yeah.
ourselves? It would be customer service, right? So treating them with respect and professionally and being responsive and timely with everything we do, getting them that accurate and timely financial data in terms of financial statements. So yeah, we are a customer service business just like they are.
I love that. All right,
Yeah.
one finance task that you'd delete forever if you could.
I hate sales tax. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you don't want to screw it up, right? There's penalties involved. It's a compliance thing. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, sales tax would be a great one. I would love to get rid of at some point.
So, how much did you and your team celebrate after tax day last week?
Yeah, I mean, we're still unfortunately going with some client audits and things like that. So, yeah, we're out of the real busy part of it all, but it tends to linger into May these days, just with everything and the way it's structured. Yeah.
That's fair. All right. And then last but not least, spreadsheets or dashboards?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um,
And then I want to know why.
Do I have to choose? I mean, they kind of go hand. The spreadsheet drives the dashboard, right? I mean,
All
I
right, fair enough.
a dashboard if I could. Yeah,
Okay. Because
because
are you a visual person then? You like to see it right in front of you?
I think my clients are the visual people. Yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
I
fair.
want something that they can see and touch, right? For me, spreadsheets are fine because that's how I am.
Fair enough. And
Yeah.
then last thing, one piece of advice that you would give if there is someone either interested in getting into accounting here on our podcast, if there is somebody who is really struggling right now, or a restaurant owner who is, trying to figure out what to do next for their struggling business or their business as they grow, what is one piece of advice that you would give them to really kind of take a step back and say, focus on this?
For the person trying to get into accounting, I would say become an expert in something, right? I think the days of being a generalist is gone.
Yeah.
So find your industry, find your niche, whatever that is, and be an expert in it would be my advice to them. And there's never been a greater time with AI to do that in terms of helping you do research and understand an industry. And
Yep.
then to the restaurateur, use the experts at your fingertips, right? So as a business owner, I mentioned you need to take off those hats, right? And do what you're good at and what you need to focus on, which means you can't be everything, right? So use experts, right? Find that HR person or that payroll person that can help you. Find that lawyer, right? Find that accountant. Take those things off your plate so you can run your business.
Fantastic. Well,
Yep.
Brad, we've appreciated you being here on the podcast. We've appreciated you being a longtime client of Factura. And um, seriously, this is so great. And we hope you and your team continue to have success. And we will chat again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Always a pleasure.